Sarah C. Bedford. She is the chief investigative reporter for the Washington Examiner, also covers Congress. Good morning, Sarah. Happy March 1st to you.
Happy March 1st. Thanks for having me.
Sarah, we averted a shutdown, but that doesn't really tell us where we're going. I am curious, is the supplemental going to be resurrected? I've urged that they attach the wall to it, but what's going to happen to the supplemental with aid for Israel, Taiwan, Ukraine, and American defense business?
Well, right now, they're barely keeping the lights on in the government, right? The first of the two deadlines that were set up by these CR votes is March 8th. So we're talking about a week from now for lawmakers to figure out these spending bills. And then the second and larger of those spending packages will be due on March 22nd. But I think, there's a lot of consternation about what that supplemental will look like at this point, because you do still have Republicans whose reservations about it were not necessarily limited to the border provisions in the original version. There's real reservations about the idea of continuing aid to Ukraine itself in any form among Republicans. That's going to make it difficult, I think, for this to move forward, even though I think but there's enough bipartisan support that it will eventually find its way to Joe Biden's desk.
Sarah, I talked to a lot of conservatives and a lot of members of the Senate. And I'm told that the Langford bill came back and they just missed the target. Didn't have the wall in it. So if the House puts the wall in it, they'll gain votes. But they also have to cut out non-military aid to Ukraine. And if they do that, add the wall and cut out non-military aid to Ukraine, only weapons, what do you think what would happen?
I think that would make a huge difference. A big reason that you see some Republicans objecting to the idea of providing this much aid to Ukraine is because a lot of it, and by some estimates, what we sent them so far, up to 40% of the aid that has been appropriated for Ukraine is, what they would call soft aid, paying for government services to continue in Ukraine. It goes beyond humanitarian aid. It's types of aid that can be particularly susceptible to waste, fraud, and abuse in a deeply corrupt country. I do think that would make a pretty big difference, at least on the margins, if not a decisive difference, in how Republicans view Ukraine aid. If it was just limited to weapons, it's harder to make the case against that because the Pentagon does tend to track that pretty efficiently. It's hard to disappear a tank, for example.
Yeah. Now, Sarah, I got to ask you about Dr. John Thunen. That's how I refer to Dr. John Barrasso, John Thune, and John Cornyn, the three leading Republicans who want to replace Leader McConnell, Dr. John Thunen. Who do you think is going to win that race? I stay out of it. They're all my friends.
I think that is exactly how most Republican senators are approaching it right now. It's early days. Nobody wants to kind of stake a position necessarily. I do think there is a little bit of skepticism of John Cornyn that he's not enough of a sort of new breed of Republican Senate Majority Leader. What I hear a lot from Republicans on Capitol Hill is that they're looking for someone who's more of a fighter, who's going to be more confrontational, where compromise is not necessarily the highest ideal of the next Republican Senate leader. So someone with sharper elbows, the ability to be that fighter. And I do think, honestly, whether Donald Trump wins in November is going to play a big role in this as well, because if Donald Trump is the next president and is potentially working with the Senate majority, he's going to want to play a very big role in selecting that leader.
Yeah, Sarah, I've talked to those three so many times. None of them are sledgehammer people. They're all rules experts. And to me, to run the Senate, you got to know the rules. Of those three, who do you think knows the rules the best?
Oh gosh, who knows the rules the best? That's a great question. I think John Cornyn has shown himself to be an institutionalist at times, to the consternation of other Republicans. But I hear a lot of excitement about John Thune. I know that at this point it's just like betting on a horse race. It's not really clear who's going to emerge victorious. But I do, if I had to give weight to the idle gossip about who people think would win, I would say that there's a lot of optimism about John Thune at the moment.
All right, I got to ask you, the next Senate building that gets built, and they always build new buildings, shouldn't it be called the McConnell building? He set the record for serving as a leader, and I don't think it's a record that's ever going to get matched. Do you?
Not in this political environment. It's hard to see someone having that kind of endurance. And I also think he's a rare figure and potentially the last one we'll see for a while who does have the respect across the aisle. I mean, you saw Democrats, including Joe Biden, release statements wishing him well and commending him on his long career. So I think he'll be one of the last politicians to garner enough support to get his name on the building for a while.
Yeah, 7 presidents he has served, and he has the respect of almost everyone who works in the building because he understands the building. That's a great term. He's an institutionalist. He understands what the Senate was supposed to be, and he made it that.